From the ground, if you look directly up, you won't see much past 3 miles other than aircraft flying through the sky. As high as that is, it actually goes up much higher than you think. 62 miles is how far you'd travel before you hit the Karman Line. This is where the international community recognizes the start of space. You might just be surprised at some of the things that happen as we get up to that height. Things on Earth are calculated with sea level as the base level for measuring elevation and depth, even things that exist below it. 427 meters below sea level is the elevation of the Dead Sea, located in Jordan. This is the lowest point found on dry land, a hypersaline lake, with salt content 30% higher than normal. If you ever wanted to walk on water like Jesus did, you'll have more success here than in any other spot on Earth. At 86 meters below, we find Death Valley, and well, even Jesus would have avoided this one. It's officially the hottest place in the world, with temperatures peaking at a rather uncomfortable 56 degrees Celsius. Above this, we have Baku in Azerbaijan, the largest city in the world to exist below sea level. This is a Great Dane, the tallest dogs in the world. This particular Dane is called Notorious Dog. He lives at sea level, rising to a height of 1 meter tall. Of the 99,779 meters between the floor and space, man has grown to 2.71 of this. This is Robert Wadlow, a 2.71 meter giant who is still the tallest recorded man to have lived. Of course, some of the beasties that lived before man were pretty big too. This is the Sauroposeidon dinosaur, which, believe it or not, was the tallest creature to ever walk on Earth. In case you're wondering about its name, as with most things, well, it's Greek, and it translates into Lizard Earthquake God. We agree, it's unlikely to have won any awards for best name. This giant was nearly as high as Chicago's Home Insurance Building, which was the world's first skyscraper. All 42.1 meters of it was demolished in 1885. Up a little higher to 56.67 meters sits the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Well, on one side. The lower side of it is 55.86 meters. Above this, we have a couple of the world's most iconic buildings. The Statue of Liberty reaches a height of 93 meters, and 3 meters above this, we have London's Big Ben. If we place the tallest tree next to Big Ben, which would you think would be taller? This is Hyperion, the tallest living tree on Earth, and is actually 19 meters higher than Big Ben. It holds enough wood to build 35 houses with 5 rooms each. Maybe that's why its location is now secret. Climbing to 182 meters, we get to the height of the tallest statue in the world, the Statue of Unity. If you did manage to get to the top, you'd have to manage a pretty tricky last 30 meters past the viewing deck. The world's tallest bridge, though, is way higher, peaking at 343 meters. This is the Malau Viaduct, and it's not only taller than the Eiffel Tower, it's pretty wide as well. New York's Empire State Building has an elevation of 381 meters, taking a year and 45 days to build, which is pretty quick if you think about it. And this is the One World Trade Center, constructed in the wake of the 9/11 attacks, and is the tallest building in the Western Hemisphere, weighing in at 541 meters. Now, as far as buildings go, to go taller, we move east, and to Dubai's luxurious Burj Khalifa. Every one of the 828 meters they built cost $1.8 million. Now we're as high as manned hot air balloons are allowed to fly. Soaring well above this is the impressive animal, the bald eagle. They've been recorded in flight as heights of up to 3,048 meters above sea level. They're also pretty efficient in a storm, being the only birds that can fly above the clouds to avoid the rain. 600 meters even higher and you'd find La Paz, the constitutional capital of Bolivia, the world's highest national capital. This is Australian Robert Moore, who flew his kite to a record height of 4,879 meters, which is nearly half the cruising altitude of commercial airlines. Now at this height, the effective O2 in the air drops from 20.9% down to 17.3%, meaning that with each breath we take in less oxygen. Even so, some people live at these heights. This is La Rinconada in Peru, located in the Peruvian Andes. They sit at an elevation of 5,100 meters and is the world's highest permanent settlement. This gold mining town has no running water, waste disposal, or even a sewage system. Don't ask. If you're impressed by how far up some people live, well, we've been outdone by a mouse. Just look at this little man, a yellow-rumped, leaf-eared mouse. We named him Hamish, which we like to do in these videos. We chose that name due to his dreams of one day being Scottish. We should have really given him the hair to match. There you go, little man. Hamish is living 6,700 meters above sea level, which is pretty incredible considering how little exists that far up. This was also the height of the highest altitude concert on land. And when we heard that, we said, why? Well, who knows, really. Only 30 people were able to see the performance on Mount Aconcagua in Argentina. Apparently, risking death isn't high on the agenda for music fans. Climbers know this next elevation well. The death zone, starting at 8,000 meters. This is the elevation in which oxygen is insufficient to sustain human life for any sustained period. Now, what you might have not known is that the amount of oxygen in the air is the same at sea level, which sounds wrong, but actually isn't. Here's why. Earth's air is made up of 78% nitrogen and 20.9% oxygen. Altitude doesn't change that. What does change is air pressure, which drops as you go up, as do the number of molecules in a fixed volume of air. In other words, a lungful of air at the top of a mountain up here has fewer oxygen molecules than a lungful of air at sea level down here. Before we continue up though, let's get some perspective on how far we actually are up now. Let's climb to the very top of the Burj Khalifa and look straight down to the land below. We are 9.6 times higher than this. Up even higher is the highest landing of a chopper at 8,848 meters above sea level, where French pilot Didier Delsol landed on the top of Mount Everest, the highest point on Earth. Up here, you'd be taking in 30% of the oxygen you'd get at the sea level with each breath. Whilst you might not be able to breathe properly, at least gravity will have helped you lose 0.31% of your sea level weight. You might also be letting it rip a little more than normal. That's maybe for another video though. Not much lives up this high, which makes this next one even stranger. In 1973, at the height of 11,300 meters, a Ruppel's vulture was out doing a little sightseeing when he was, rather inconveniently, hit by a commercial airliner flying over West Africa. This vulture came off second best on this one, but not before setting the record for the highest flight ever recorded for any bird, ever. So now we're close to the universally approved maximum height that commercial airliners fly, 12,801 meters in elevation. Some planes, though, were developed to go higher, way higher. Now, the record for a sustained altitude flight was set in 1976 by the iconic Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird, which sustained flight at an elevation of 26,000 meters. It traveled 3 times the speed of sound. That's 660 miles an hour, which, by all accounts, is pretty fast. The absolute altitude record, though, for a jet aircraft under its own power was recorded even higher, at 37,648 meters. That was set by Alexander V. Fedotov. Then on October 14, 2012, Austrian Felix Baumgartner set the skydiving record, jumping from 40,000 meters up, a starting point well into the stratosphere. At some point, it just starts to get silly. Jumping from this platform on his helium balloon, he reached a falling speed of Mach 1.25, and that's 959 miles an hour, which is insanely fast. This guy was the first person to break the sound barrier without engine power. Now, even into the stratosphere, this wasn't the highest a plane has gone. In 1961, U.S. test pilot Robert White took an X-15 experimental space plane to 95,916 meters, traveling at 6 times the speed of sound, which is an incredible 4,602 miles an hour. However, this wasn't considered a record, as the aircraft was launched at altitude from a modified B-52. It's really all in the fine print. The following year, though, Joseph Walker, a NASA test pilot, climbed even higher to a height of 107,960 meters above sea level. That's 10 times the cruising altitude of commercial flights. He would record 3 flights that year, each reaching over 80,000 meters. Now, what makes Walker's flights interesting here is that the international community defines the start of space as the Karman Line. That's this 100,000 meter line above sea level. So technically, Walker was an astronaut and flew to outer space twice, but it also depends on who you ask. As NASA and the US military define the start of space at 80,000 meters, then according to them, 3 of Walker's flights, all above 80,000 meters, would have been classed as traveling into space. Pretty impressive either way. Now, 3 years after these historic flights, Walker would be killed in a fatal group formation accident whilst doing a photo shoot for General Electric, but not before making it into the history books. Beyond the Karman Line, we move into space, and the next stop, well, is the moon. And while it might look pretty close in the night sky, it's actually really far away. To give you a perspective, if we started at any point on the equator, say here, and did 1 full lap of the Earth, Back to this point, we would travel roughly 24,901 miles. Now, to get to the moon, we would need 10 similar laps of Earth to get an equal distance, a journey of 238,806 miles, a distance which grows by 1.5 inches each year as the moon continues to move further away from Earth. We'd like to thank you for watching. Please join the community by hitting that subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.